Have you ever noticed that some of the kindest people you know also seem to be the most exhausted? The ones who are always there when needed, who smile through everything, who say yes even when it costs them. But if you look a little closer, if you really pay attention, you might see the fatigue behind their eyes. You might feel that behind their warmth lies something deeper, something heavier, perhaps even painful. We often treat kindness as a simple, unquestionable good. We teach children to be kind, we value it in our leaders, and we define our humanity by how much compassion we show. Yet kindness, like everything else in this complex world, carries its own shadow. And when that shadow is ignored, when we act as if it doesn't exist, kindness itself can quietly become harmful. It usually begins early. A child learns that being kind and agreeable earns them love or approval. When they set aside their needs to make others happy, they're rewarded with praise, attention, maybe even affection they didn't receive otherwise. Over time, this pattern embeds itself deep within them. Kindness turns into a means of survival. And as they grow older, separating their true self from what others expect becomes increasingly difficult. They become the dependable one, the good person, the friend who never complains. But here's the hard truth. When kindness is motivated by fear of rejection or a constant need for validation, it's no longer genuine. It turns into a mask. And when that mask is worn for too long, it begins to suffocate the person underneath. Think about the people in your life who are endlessly kind. They'll listen for hours, help you move, lend you money they can't afford to give, all while quietly carrying their own unseen burdens. Some people give up their own rest just to make sure you're okay. At first it seems noble, almost saintly. But if you've ever been that person, if you've lived that role, you already know the truth. Behind every act of self-sacrifice lies a quiet resentment, a small voice that asks, "What about me?" Yet that voice is often silenced, because kindness, especially constant kindness, carries an unspoken rule. You're not supposed to put yourself first. Psychologists have studied this pattern and even given it a name: compassion fatigue. It describes what happens when a person gives so much of their empathy and care that their emotional resources eventually run out. Healthcare workers face it, teachers face it, even parents face it. But it's not limited to certain jobs. Ordinary people, those who see themselves as gentle, giving, or kind, are vulnerable too. Research shows that people who consistently put others before themselves report higher levels of anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues compared to those who keep a healthy balance. Kindness, when it goes unchecked, turns into self-erasure, and that's its hidden cost. Kindness without limits isn't kindness at all. It becomes a quiet form of self-destruction. It's like watering every plant in the garden except your own roots. Eventually, the gardener collapses and the garden fades with them. But here's the more unsettling truth. Sometimes kindness itself becomes a weapon. And not in the obvious sense, and not someone faking kindness to manipulate others, but in a softer, subtler way, in an unconscious way. When you become known as the kind one, people begin to expect it. They depend on it. Their behavior adjusts around it. Without realizing it, your kindness subtly teaches others that your needs come second, that your feelings are optional. Over time, people stop asking what you want because they assume you'll always adapt to them. The kind person, without intending to, ends up teaching the world to overlook them. This creates a quiet paradox. The kinder you are, the more invisible you become. And invisibility isn't peace. It's loneliness disguised as politeness. Now, this doesn't mean kindness is wrong. Far from it. Genuine kindness remains one of the most beautiful and powerful forces in existence. But there's an important difference between kindness that flows from fullness and kindness that drains from emptiness. One restores, the other erodes. One comes from love, the other from fear. Let's consider some facts. A study, published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, found that people who struggle to say no, often those who identify as kind and agreeable, are far more likely to experience burnout. Another study from the University of California, Berkeley, revealed that altruistic behavior boosts well-being, but only when it's voluntary and sincere. When kindness stems from guilt, obligation, or the fear of disappointing others, It produces the opposite effect, lowering happiness and heightening stress. Yet many of us remain stuck in this loop. We don't want to let anyone down, so we keep saying yes. We don't want to appear selfish, so we keep giving. We don't want to lose love, so we keep sacrificing. But the price of endless kindness is heavy. Gradually, you lose touch with who you are. You forget what you truly want because your entire identity has been built around serving others. You become a stranger to yourself, and that's where the monster within begins to take shape. When you suppress your needs, deny your anger, or bury your boundaries in the name of kindness, and those emotions don't vanish. They gather in the dark. They ferment. Eventually, they find their way out in forms you can't predict or control. Maybe it's snapping at someone you care about over something trivial. Maybe it's the passive-aggressive remark, or quiet resentment that seeps through your tone. Or perhaps it's deeper, years of repressed emotions erupting all at once, leaving you startled by the person you've become. We often believe kindness protects us from darkness, but in truth, kindness without honesty becomes the perfect environment for it. Because every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you smile when you want to cry, every time you hold back when you should speak up, when you silence your truth just to make others feel comfortable, that isn't kindness, and it's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment always carries consequences. Let's be honest, why do we do this? Why do genuinely kind people find it so difficult to set boundaries? The answer lies in our upbringing and culture. From an early age, many of us are taught that being kind makes us worthy, that being agreeable is safer than being honest, that love must be earned through giving, not by simply being who we are. Children who grow up in homes where affection is conditional, where love depends on performance, obedience, or sacrifice, often carry this belief into adulthood. They become adults who mistake people-pleasing for kindness. But true kindness doesn't erase your identity. It includes it. If your kindness comes at the cost of your peace, energy, or joy, then it's no longer kindness. It's self-neglect disguised as virtue, and this is where understanding matters. Neuroscience shows that our brains contain something called the mirror neuron system, the mechanism that enables empathy. When you see someone in pain, your brain reacts as though you're in pain too. That's why kindness feels so natural. We're wired to connect. But here's the problem. Mirror neurons don't differentiate between healthy empathy and harmful empathy. When you constantly absorb others' pain without limits, your brain overloads with stress signals. Over time, that leads to chronic stress, weakened immunity, and emotional burnout. Simply put, our brains aren't designed for limitless, boundaryless kindness. They're designed for balanced connection. The darker side of kindness isn't that kindness itself is wrong. It's that fear, cultural conditioning, and unhealed wounds can twist it into something that seems noble, but slowly drains us. What once felt like our greatest strength can become the very thing that breaks us. So pause and reflect. If you've ever felt exhausted, unseen, or resentful, even as people praise you for being so kind, know this: you're not alone. You're not broken. You're simply experiencing what happens when the world teaches giving but forgets to teach protection. That inner frustration, that quiet anger isn't evil. It's your truth asking to be heard. So the real question becomes, how can we stay kind without losing ourselves? How can we remain compassionate without turning into martyrs? How do we love others without abandoning our own needs? The answer is simple, yet deeply uncomfortable. Kindness must begin with you. Not in a selfish way, but in a way that honors your truth. Not in a disregardful way toward others, but in the understanding that if your kindness doesn't include yourself, it isn't genuine kindness, it's performance. And performance, no matter how well-intentioned, eventually breaks down. Think of it this way. When you're on an airplane, you're told during the safety briefing to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. At first that might feel wrong, even selfish. Why would you not help your child or loved one first? But the reasoning is simple. You can't help anyone if you lose consciousness yourself. The same rule applies to kindness. When you ignore your own needs, your rest, or your well-being, your ability to care for others eventually fades. That's where boundaries become essential. Yet for many kind-hearted people, boundaries can feel intimidating. They seem like rejection, selfishness, or emotional distance. In truth, boundaries are a form of honesty. They say, this is what I can offer, And this is what I can't. They say my care is real, but it cannot exist if I am drained. They say, I value you enough to be clear about my limits because without them, my care turns into resentment. Psychologists describe boundaries as invisible lines that define where you end and another person begins. Without these lines, relationships blur into dependency, manipulation, or quiet suffering. With them, relationships become balanced, respectful, and mutual. Studies even show that people who set healthy boundaries often form deeper, more fulfilling connections, because their kindness comes from intention, not obligation. And interestingly, those who uphold their boundaries are seen as more reliable. When they say yes, it carries weight. Their kindness is genuine, not forced, and authenticity naturally draws people in. But here's the difficult part. Setting boundaries isn't only about saying no to others. It's also about saying yes to yourself. That can feel deeply uncomfortable if you've built your identity around being selfless. It can even feel like you're betraying the very image others praise you for. You might lose relationships because of it. Some people may resist your change, accuse you of being different, or even step away. That's painful but necessary, because relationships built on endless giving were never truly equal to begin with. Let's go a bit deeper into the psychology. There's a concept called pathological altruism. It refers to when the urge to help becomes harmful, to the giver or the receiver, like when someone neglects their health while caring for others, or when constant rescuing keeps others from developing independence. Pathological altruism may look like kindness, but it breeds exhaustion, guilt, and dependency. It's kindness distorted into harm. And this connects to something broader, the cultural ideal of the good person. Many societies glorify kindness as the ultimate virtue, but often in ways that quietly promote self-erasure. Think of the phrases we hear so often. She's such a good girl. She never causes trouble, or he's such a nice guy, always helping everyone. Hidden in those compliments lies a subtle but risky belief that being good means never setting limits, never refusing, and never disturbing the peace. But genuine goodness isn't about erasing who you are. It's about showing up as your true whole self and still choosing compassion. When kindness is rooted in authenticity, it empowers. When it stems from fear, it confines. So how can you move from fearful kindness to liberated kindness? Here are a few lifelong practices to help you make that shift. Not quick solutions, but steady habits. First, learn to pause. When someone asks something of you, resist the urge to respond instantly. Take a breath. Create space to check in with yourself. Ask, do I have the energy for this? Do I genuinely want to do this? Does this align with my values? Even a short pause can stop you from falling into automatic people-pleasing. Second, embrace the art of gentle refusal. Saying no doesn't have to sound harsh. It can be sincere and kind. Try. I care about you, but I can't take this on right now, or I'd love to help, but I don't have the capacity. The world won't collapse if you say no. In truth, honest boundaries make your yes far more meaningful. Third, redefine your sense of worth. Your value doesn't depend on how much you give or how often you please others. It's inherent. You existed long before anyone expected something from you. You are worthy of love when you say no, when you rest, and when you choose not to carry everything. Fourth, nurture your inner world. Fill your life with what sustains you. Friendships that bring joy, creative outlets, and quiet moments of peace. When you live from abundance instead of emptiness, kindness flows freely. It's effortless, fulfilling, and no longer a trade-off. Fifth, make space for difficult emotions. Anger, frustration, and sadness aren't the enemies of kindness, they're signals. They show up when your limits are crossed or your needs go unmet. If you bury them, they grow into resentment. But if you acknowledge and listen to them, they guide you back to balance. Now think of kindness as a mask many people wear. The polite smile that hides exhaustion, the easy yes that avoids conflict, the generosity used to prove worth. Yet masks are heavy. The longer you wear them, the harder it is to recognize your own face. The goal isn't to discard kindness, but to take off the mask, to let kindness arise from the real you. The version of you that can say both yes and no with honesty. The version that's kind without disappearing. There's an old truth. If you want to know who you are, look at how you treat yourself when no one else is watching. That's where authentic kindness begins, not in earning approval, but in accepting yourself completely. True kindness isn't found in the praise of being the nice one, but in the quiet choices you make for your own well-being. Do you rest when you're weary? Do you forgive yourself when you fall short?
Do you speak to yourself with gentleness?
If not, your kindness toward others rests on an unsteady base. Here's the truth. When you begin to treat yourself with genuine care, your kindness toward others becomes deeper and more sustainable. It doesn't drain you. It energizes you. It uplifts instead of overwhelms. It encourages others to grow alongside you rather than depend endlessly on you. And perhaps that's the real lesson. The dark side of kindness isn't about rejecting kindness itself. It's about evolving it. Turning it from a mask into a mirror, from habit into choice, from mere survival into genuine love. So the next time someone calls you kind, take a moment to reflect. Is your kindness coming from fear or from freedom? From exhaustion or abundance? From a mask or your authentic self? The answer will reveal more about who you are than any compliment ever could. Because in the end, the hidden struggle of kind people isn't their anger, boundaries, or limits. It's self-neglect. When you finally confront that, when you put down the mask, you realize your kindness hasn't vanished. It has evolved and stronger, wiser, and brighter. It becomes the kind of kindness that not only sustains others, but nourishes you too. And maybe that's the truest form of kindness, to live wholly as yourself. No erasing, no pretending, no apologizing. To remind the world that compassion doesn't mean disappearing. It means being real. That's the kind of kindness the world needs most, not endless yeses or silent endurance, but the courage to love deeply without losing yourself.